Hello, my darlings. It's me, BellaLu Ghostly, your favorite spooky spinster, back with our first list in quite some time. And I thought, what better way to start it off with than characters in horror movies that get everyone killed? How rude! The first name on our list comes from director James Cameron's 1986 follow-up to the classic sci-fi horror Alien, entitled Aliens. Yes, we've heard about Ripley as the final girl to death, and she is quite wonderful. We've heard about the alternative timelines of one Miss Newt and the sexy Corporal Hicks surviving into part 3, but then part 3 became some sort of... I don't know what you would call part 3. I did enjoy it. But for today's list, we are talking none other than Berg. Berg was played by one Mr. Paul Reiser, who, if you are of a certain age, you will remember from a rom-com comedy television show called Mad About You. And no, it was not about going crazy. It co-starred one Miss Helen Hunt before she started chasing tornadoes. But I digress. Berg is one supreme asshole. He knew the risks of LV-226, and yet he still sent the colonizers down to terraform the planet. This is a lot of sci-fi speak coming from your spooky spinster, by the way. I mean, in the way I portray, you might think I know what I'm talking about. Once Berg had sent the colonies to their deaths, he basically stopped thinking about them. That is until Ripley came involved, having been rescued from the first Alien film. When they lose contact with the colonies, they enlist one Miss Ripley to go down with the Marines, which also include Vasquez, one of my most favorite horror sci-fi characters of all time. And despite being named Vasquez, she was played by Jeanette Goldstein. Not Latina at all. And Berg knew what he was doing, bringing down the Marines, just as he knew there was a threat to the colonizers on LV-226 before he knew there was a threat to the Marines. This is now two groups of people that this dick is going to make perish. Shenanigans ensue. Chests are busted. And the xenomorph does get to running its mouth quite a bit. And what does Berg do? He decides to sacrifice Ripley and Newt to the aliens so that they could harbor the embryos, bringing them back because they could get through customs that way. I mean, if you've ever been through customs coming back into the United States, you know it is quite a dumpster fire. Oh, and he also planned to off all of the Marines so that no one would know about his little plot. Quite ingenious, if you ask me. But I am a sociopath. So there's that. Anyway, as the battle rages on, Berg decides one final gallant act of heroism. No, he decides to once again be a punk-ass bitch, leaving his entire team to die and closing the door behind him. But as luck would have it, there was a giant xenomorph waiting behind door number 1. The price is not right for you, Mr. Berg. No, it is not. And then Berg dies! It's so perfect. I only wish we saw more of it on screen. But you know, dying off screen is a special privilege reserved only for the worst and dumbest of horror characters, in my opinion. Which is exactly what he deserves. I just love that movie, don't you? Today we are continuing our list of horror characters that get everyone else killed. These diabolical dimwits lead their friends and teammates into death's way, whether knowingly or by their own stupidity. Today's character is extra vile in my opinion, coming from the 2005 film The Descent. If you haven't guessed it by now, we are talking about one Miss Juno, played expertly by the exquisite Natalie Mendoza. Natalie perfectly encompasses Juno's character because you both kind of feel for her, yet you hate her, but you kind of understand where she's coming from because we've all been the other bitch at some point. I digress. The Descent is a wondrous movie about a whole group of friends that, after a tragedy, decide to go spelunking in a cave. Splunking is one activity you will never catch me doing. The best way to not die in a cave is to not go in a cave. It's just like shark attacks. I'm never going to be eaten by a shark unless Sharknado happens because I don't go in the ocean. Anyway, so all of these girlfriends are going on this splunking trip because a year before, the main character Sarah was in a horrendous car accident where both her husband and her daughter had their face pierced like it was Claire's at the mall. And there are some hints of Juno having an extracurricular activity with Sarah's husband. Juno, 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 I'm begging you, please don't take Sarah's man. I am unhinged. Also, there is a lot of gay subtext in this movie, which I positively adore. Sure enough, one Miss Juno, after banging her best friend's husband, takes them into a cave that is not the cave that they thought they were going into. This is a previously undiscovered cave. I guess discovering holes in the ground is something that people value. I don't know. Anyway, so she already led her friends into a very dangerous situation that she had no way of getting them out of, and then guess what happens? Well, they're in a fucking horror movie. God, I almost sounded like Alistair there for a second. So then these strange cryptid creatures attack and start killing off the girls one by one in rather gruesome deaths. The girls fight for their lives, but they are no match against these creatures that have evolved over apparently centuries. Because if you recall, they do find that old mining equipment. I have always thought that there would be a really good period piece as a prequel to The Descent. You know, going and starting where the mines are, and then maybe even going back further to find out how those creatures came about. Were they always cryptids? Were they experimented on? Or are they the products of some sort of nuclear fallout? We may never know. Because God knows that sequel did not give us anything to talk about. By the end of the movie, it is only Juno and Sarah left. That is when Sarah reveals that Beth had given her a necklace that Sarah's husband had given Juno during their affairs. Oh, and Juno struck Beth in the neck and left her to die. What a bitch. Anyways, at the end of the movie, it's just Sarah and Juno left making their triumphant escape when Sarah reveals that she knows about Juno's extracurriculars with the ex-husband, and she plunges a pickaxe into the skank's legs. That's right, Juno, you go to jail. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. As much as I love a story where the side piece wins, I do think this is a wonderful justice, as it was Juno that kind of influenced the first car accident to happen in the first place, and then she leads her friends into a doomed tunnel which is then filled with monsters and they all die anyway. And somehow this bitch makes it to the sequel. I'm just glad she doesn't make it out of it. Today we are concluding our list of horror characters that get everyone else killed, with none other than one of my most favorite horror movies of all time. That's right, today we are talking about Kristen from A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4, The Dream Master. In this film, we see one Miss Tuesday Night filling the role of Kristen, taking over from Patricia Arquette. It was because of money. We all know it was because of money, and we will not hear anything different. But regardless, Tuesday brought a wondrous new vulnerability to the role. She truly brought forth a sadness that Kristen was almost lacking in the first film. Like, yes, Patricia Arquette was absolutely marvelous in the role. She was exquisite. However, she was more of the aloof, suicidal teenager. She hadn't really lost much. However, by the fourth film, Kristen had lost everything. Nancy, most all of her friends from the asylum. Yet somehow she still had Elaine. Oh, Elaine, played by the wondrous Brooke Burke. I do love Elaine. She was actually on a prior list that I did of my most favorite parents in horror movies. So as we all know from Dream Warriors and now Dream Masters, Kristen's power is to bring people into her dream. Now, although I definitely will argue that Kristen is responsible for Nancy's death in Dream Warriors, as she does bring her into the dream that she was not having, thanks to, I want to say Gambutrol. Oh, just a quick Google and it was Hypnosil. I need to get my horror movie pharmaceuticals rather arranged, don't I? Or if you have a prescription for something, I would love to talk. So yes, in my opinion, Kristen is responsible for Nancy's death. But in this movie, in part 4, in Nightmare on Elm Street Dream Master, I do feel that it is Kristen's fault that most everyone else dies. It's never really explained how Freddy comes back, and it's just simply from, Kincaid's dog urinating on a skeleton. I mean, that shouldn't bring enough to bring back a dream demon, right? I mean, and if it is, I think I have massively overpaid numerous times. Someone should make a resurrection app where we can develop a point system and maybe get one free every 5th time. Anyway, so I also believe Kristen brought Freddy, but this is getting rather long. I do think she stirred up Freddy Krueger and brought him back, leading to Joey and Kincaid's death. And while that should have been the end of it, it was Kristen that called Alice into the dream. It was Kristen that transferred her power into Alice. And then the law of transitive property, Alice started bringing people into the dream. So that would mean that Kristen is responsible for everyone's death. Don't you think? I mean, it wasn't her fault. It wasn't like Miss Juno from earlier in the list, where all of the deaths were a direct result of her own ignorant bitchery. No. Kristen was merely trying to reach out and touch someone. She was scared. She was panicked. She had nothing left to do. Thus bringing Alice into her dream. I mean, it's not as if she could escape, because that bitch Elaine had already drugged her. What kind of a parent feeds their child narcotics? Also, what child doesn't notice that there are pills dissolving in their drink and taste the bitterness? I mean, I guess she was going through a lot. She just lost Kincaid and Joey, and this was obviously shortly after she had lost everyone in part 3, but who knows? Either way, Kristen got all of her friends killed. I hope you've enjoyed this list of horror movie characters that got all of their friends killed. My name is BellaLu Ghostly. Have a nice day.